investors. Welcome to Stocks to Watch. I'm Ashley Berry, and today we're turning our spotlight to an intriguing play in the unmanned systems and aerial robotics space. Draganfly Inc., listed both on the NASDAQ and Canadian Securities Exchange as DPRO and in Frankfurt as 3U8A. They have a legacy as one of the earliest innovators in commercial drone technology. Of course, you can tell from behind Cameron here. Draganfly is focused on delivering advanced aerial data solutions to a diverse roster of customers spanning government agencies, enterprise organizations, and private sector innovators. Under the leadership of Cameron Chell, CEO of Draganfly, they're navigating an evolving market where demand for autonomous systems, public safety applications, and integrated data services is expanding rapidly. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome you, Cameron, to Stocks to Watch. I'm so excited for this conversation.
Thanks, Ashley. It's a pleasure to be invited. Thank you very much.
Yes, pleasure to have you. So, as I mentioned, you sell to both government and private sector customers. So, how large would you say is the total market you're addressing, and how fast is it growing?
Well, it's a very difficult question to address simply because I like to frame it. If you imagine if this is, 1998 or 2000, and somebody says, how large is this internet market? It's 100 times larger than what any analyst I've seen has ever imagined. Internet, AI, drones, autonomy in particular, as it relates to drones, isn't really a sector. It's a foundational play. So there is no industry, I mean, no industry that will not be affected or not utilize drones. So it's kind of like saying, hey, are you you would never say today, are you an internet company? Every company is an internet. Every company's, infrastructure, backend, everything relies on the internet. And conversely, AI is the same, and conversely, autonomy, in particular aerial drones, is the same. So it is a multi-trillion-dollar market. It's been quantified over the years many times, into the multiple, tens and 50s and 60s of billions of dollars. So very specifically, where we address the market, it is, just the US budget alone for the categories of drones that we manufacture ranks into the multiples of billions of dollars. So tough question to answer, but the total TAM, which sounds ridiculous, is in the trillions.
Yeah, and it's actually easy to compartmentalize when you compare it to the internet back in the day. So I appreciate that, and I'm sure our viewers and listeners do as well, to help understand. So, drones have been around for a long time. So what would you say really differentiates Draganfly from other manufacturers, and where do you believe you stand out most competitively? Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos.
Well, I think the most notable differentiation about Draganfly, as compared to the comps, I'll call it, out there, is that Draganfly is, I can't find anybody to dispute this, and any research I've done supports it, is we're the oldest drone category 1 and category 2 drone manufacturer in the world. We've been manufacturing drones since 1998. That's actually when we sold our first drone. And so what that really means at the end of the day for a shareholder is that we've got a bench of engineers and subject matter experts that have been doing this for 25 years. Now there's probably 50 engineers and maybe 100 engineers, in the business that have been around for 25 years doing this type of work. And yet, the majority of those folks are at Draganfly. So what really translates to, as it relates to Draganfly, is there's only 2 drone companies in the world that have fully commercialized integrated product lines in drones. One of them is DJI, which is an absolutely massive 90% market share company, which is now going through transformation because of what's happening in the rest of the world and security concerns, et cetera, et cetera. And DJI is a company that has 10,000 engineers, literally 10,000 engineers. But they have a product line that's integrated that goes everything from, very small drones all the way up to, agricultural spray and logistics drones. And if we look at the rest of the market out there, except for Draganfly, they tend to have a drone system. that they are bringing to market, excuse me, over the last, kind of 4 or 5 years that might do intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance work. It might do logistics work, or it might do, drone as a first responder and public safety, or a couple of different things. But they don't necessarily have an integrated platform of multiple types of drones that all work together for a sophisticated tier one customer. And so, you look at a company like Draganfly, which has, less than 20 engineers, but we've been able to accomplish this simply because we've been around for 27 years. So, I mean, it takes years to get a new drone platform off the ground. So if we look at our fantastic and really great comps out there in terms of other companies that are in the space alongside us, for them to launch a new drone platform that maybe lifts something, 15 pounds heavier and can fly, an extra 20 minutes longer, these are aircraft. It's years of testing, FAA approvals, like it just takes that much time. So this is a really big distinct advantage for us. It also means that all of the different payloads, meaning the things like these sensors and cameras and stuff that are on our drones, we've got hundreds of integrations with partners out there. So we've got these other sensors out there that are also selling our equipment because they know it can work on a varying degree of different platforms that can have very different mission sets. So that's a big, big differentiator for us. I mean, Draganfly, the reason that we're the oldest in the world is we're the only North American company that survived. So if we look at, other than the last 5 to 7 years, every single drone manufacturer out of North America and Western Europe has gone out of business. Every single one of them. And lots of people want to dispute me on this. And then we start going through the list and they're like, oh my gosh, you're right. So if that was 3DR, Air Lily, Airware, GoPro, you name it. They all had hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. Andreessen Horowitz backed. John Chambers was the chairman of Airware. Like, amazing pedigree, great engineering, but they all went out of business. And Draganfly didn't. Now, the reason, so Draganfly is still a relatively very small company. I mean, we've hit our hockey stick now, and it's kind of insane what's happening, which is fantastic after 27 years. But the reason that we survived is that we stayed small and we knew how to produce drones and service customers month to month, make payroll, and scale appropriately. The industry previously, everybody saw the potential, but they didn't understand that the regulatory environment did not yet exist for commercial drones to actually propagate. So without beyond visual line of sight regulation and those types of things in place, which only haven't come into effect, until the last few years, there wasn't a commercial market. There was commercial potential. So we ended up surviving because, we had, a handful, let's call it 24 police departments in the United States and Canada that believed us when we said that the Chinese drones were a security risk. Now, most everybody else didn't. And those kind of 24 departments were like, we're buying our Ford trucks and we're buying our Draganfly drones. But we're twice as expensive as say what a DJI system would be, and the DJI systems are fantastic. So but they were just very loyal customers that we really worked to overservice, and that helped keep the lights on and keep building our technology. We have a very significant patent portfolio, and then the other thing that we've been doing for the last 25 plus years is that we have been contract engineering to the primes. So the General Atomics of the world, that AeroVironment was our largest client for years. We've been building, the systems that people see out there today that are, oh my gosh, drones that are like shooting out nets and capturing other drones and counter drones. I mean, we were building those 15 years ago plus. And so, a lot of this isn't new to us. And we're actually able to execute, not that other companies aren't, but we're actually able to execute very well on getting the technology out into the market. And we've got the military clearances, we've got, the military customers, the Department of Defense, or now the Department of War, has been a customer of ours on and off for years. So I think, our biggest differentiator is that, we've been around a long time. We're trusted within the decision makers, pool, the industry, military, government, commercial, and we can build stuff that other people just generally don't have the experience to build yet.
Yeah, it's incredibly impressive what you've been able to accomplish over the decades. The fact that you've been able to survive, as you said, there was
That's
so much hype, right, around drones and that. And then you're right. It's like they all disappeared, but you didn't. So I'm very curious to hear about maybe a little bit about sort of and you did touch on this, but what would you say the metrics for Draganfly really matter most when you're measuring growth and overall performance?
Well, we're still at a spot right now where the most important thing to us will always be at the spot, hopefully. But the metrics that we still, and hopefully we'll always care most about is candidly our employee and partner satisfaction. So, are we doing projects and building things that are meaningful? Are we doing projects and building things that make a difference? And that's actually been the key to our survival. So Draganfly was the first drone that was ever, credited with saving a human life was a Draganflyer drone on a search and rescue mission. And that drone sits on permanent display in the Smithsonian. That is a really important cultural piece of what we do, what we hire around, the type of people, the passion, the caring. We're looking for people that really want to make a difference. And we're very, very lucky culturally to have that type of base of resources. The other thing that we are extremely proud of, and we try not to be proud, but that we're extremely grateful that we got to participate in, is right at the very beginning of the expanded operations in Ukraine in 22, when the invasion into the other areas other than Crimea in Ukraine happened. We were boots on the ground literally within weeks. And we were doing demining missions. The missions that we're most proud about is that we were flying using our equipment at our cost and expense and our resources. We were using actually this particular drone up here to fly insulin into the cities that were besieged, right? Because there's ambulances couldn't get in, rescue teams couldn't get in. We raised money for insulin. We built a steel box that kept it at certain temperatures. We're flying crazy missions in, dropping off, losing drones. But it was culturally so important for us. And so that's still how we measure our most important metric. The second metric that we measure against is our partner satisfaction. So the people that help us, build these sensors and understand the missions that at the end of the day, people, they buy a drone, but what they really care about is what the drone is going to do. Mm-hmm. So our entire culture is based around how do we satisfy our customer in a way that we can make them uncompetable, meaning that if you deal with Draganfly, you have a competitive advantage. And so our partner relationships are incredibly important. Third is our customer relationships. So are our customers becoming uncompetable? Do we give our customers a strategic advantage over their competitors? Whether that's a foreign adversary or whether that's another commercial company, yet we want Draganfly to be your strategic advantage. And then fourthly, are our financial metrics. So the first on those is, are we scaling? And if we're scaling, revenue is coming with that. So market share. And then fifth is profitability. So, that's how we look at it. And at this point, by the graces of, higher powers, then, we seem to be on track in those areas at this time.
Clearly, and it's incredibly inspiring. And the fact that you saved a life, I mean, that to me says it all right there. So, for those listening, for those watching, outside of everything that you've already said, what would you say makes Draganfly a compelling investment opportunity today?
Well, I think there's four overall things that I think make us compelling and differentiated. First of all, because of our longevity, we have a full product line. And that is really starting to, and over the coming year or two, will really demonstrate its value as we've got larger and larger and these tier one customers that are coming to us and going, hey, we thought we needed a drone to do surveillance, but we actually, now that we've done surveillance, we have to deliver a payload, or we have to deliver ordnance, or we have to deliver forward operating base logistics, or we have to drop in medical equipment, or we have to, and all of these systems have to talk and operate the same. And these operators don't want to have to train people on different systems and have different parts and things that don't interact with each other, and software systems that are disparate. So we are open source. So, because we want to invite as big of an ecosystem as possible. So that full product line is a really, really big difference for us. And surprisingly, it just doesn't exist out there outside of us and DJI. The second thing that makes us very, very different is that we have a group that's called the Integrated Tactical Solutions Group. So these are typically, former tier one operators that actually embed with our customers to design not just the products that we want to deliver, but actually understand the concept of operations. So, our FPV drones, which are now which are the, one-way attributable drones, as an example, that are being purchased by the Department of War now. and numbers of different brigades were actually designed on the front line in Ukraine. And they're a very unique design. They have incredible features that other FPVs don't have that are often not technical, but they're tactical, meaning that there's subtle design things that allow certain things to happen with those FPVs that unless you were in those operations, you wouldn't understand how important they are. And so that tactical integrations group, as another example, Cochise County Sheriffs on the southern border in the US, we spent 6 months with them, literally on horseback, in ATVs, patrolling the border, understanding where crossing points were, understanding the tactics of the cartels around human trafficking and drug trafficking, understanding the points where they get to on the US side after they get across the border. And then we designed a drone system. So this is a drone that can stay up in the air for 7 hours, carry 100 pounds, can do interdictions, is
Wow.
AI enabled. It's a drone that didn't exist before, but it was absolutely required for that southern border mission. And now we're looking at that particular drone being used by all sheriffs across the entire southern border. And so that makes us very different, that we can put operators in place before we actually deliver a product. The third thing, which is not as obvious, but the fact that we manufacture both in Canada and the United States. So the United States is obviously our primary market in manufacturing, et cetera. But we started in Canada, and we have 2 manufacturing facilities up there. Now, due to the unfortunate tariff wars, which we thought was going to be a disaster for companies like us initially, has turned out to be, an absolute boom. And the reason being is that all of our demand signals and everything that we happen from our US manufacturing are in place and growing better than we could have ever hoped or probably deserve. But on the Canadian side, what's happened is that Canada is now going to 5% of its GDP for defense spending. Now, this is like the 6th largest economy in the world, and 5% of it's going to it's a massive spend number. So approximately $1 billion of that is being spent over the next 3 years on drones in Canada. But Canada, by parliamentary decision and budget, now for the first time in probably its history, has a Buy Canadian mandate. There's one manufacturer of drones in Canada.
Hmm.
It's just like, oh my God, there's like a couple $100 million of revenue over the next couple of years that's available to us. I mean, listen, we have to continue to prove ourselves, and we're deeply embedded in the system, I'll call it, up there. But it's just like, okay, I mean, it's literally probably as a bigger market for us now than the US market. So in the US market, of course, but in the US market, we've got 15 really credible competitors. There's probably 150 competitors, but there's probably 15 or maybe even 5 that are really, that we operate at the same level that they do with clearances and technology and execution. But in Canada, there isn't. And so comparatively, when you look at those 2 budgets, the pie up there is so incredibly big for us. So that was not planned. It was a pleasant surprise for sure. But that is another big differentiator for us if you're comparing us to, say, some of the other names that are out there on the NASDAQ.
Unbelievable. Really, to me, it's like what comes in my mind is, oh, the places you'll go and the places you've
Wow.
been and
Great
what
point.
you have accomplished over, just over 2 decades is just so incredibly impressive. And I love the stories about the work you're doing in the US as well, how you're helping law enforcement officers. I mean, this is such important work, and your energy and enthusiasm is certainly infectious, Cameron. So thank you for your time today, and really excited as you have this expanding footprint, both government and commercial channels. Now you mentioned what's happening in Canada, and a leadership team, which to me sounds like is really focused on differentiated technology and, quite frankly, human well-being. So Draganfly, I would say to you investors out there watching and listening, is absolutely worth watching, seeking exposure to the next wave of robotics and sensor-driven solutions. What an exciting story. Cameron Chell, CEO of Draganfly, again, listed on the NASDAQ and the Canadian Securities Exchange, both as DPRO and in Frankfurt as 3U8A. Cameron, thank you so much for your time today and for joining us here.
Actually, it's our pleasure. Thank you very much.